Well, it must be a special day if I'm dressing this nice today. And it is a special day. Day one of OU officially being in the SEC, July 1st. Let's go. The SEC gets Oklahoma and the best college softball program out there. So let's talk some SEC softball. Gray Robertson, he's on the Alabama radio crew for softball, and he's been around the SEC for a very, very long time. We'll talk OU's transition to the SEC, Nigeria, Kennedy, and a whole lot more. Hope you enjoy. What I've figured out about this guy is if there's a softball game in the Southeast, if there's softball to talk about in the Southeast, this guy's going to be behind a microphone somewhere, at the ballpark, wherever. He's Gray Robertson. He does it all, man. He's on the Alabama radio team. He calls games for the SEC network, got his own podcast as well. Very, very involved in the softball world. And I thought I dressed nice today for the occasion, Gray. We both got SEC gear on today. Let's go. I thought I was going to outdress you, but that's not the case. As you can see, this is a very big day across the state of Oklahoma. We're super excited, and I'll just kind of start it there. Like, what's the attitude, the excitement level? Like, how does everyone feel now that OU and Texas are officially members of the SEC and what that means for the softball conference?
First off, thank you for having me. Love the shirt. Great job. Absolutely crushing it. This is a big day, and this conference is something that means a lot to me. I've grown up in it. I was a ball boy at the SEC men's basketball tournament when I was 7. I've been a part of it in a variety of ways since I was a kid. And I think what makes it so exciting is not just the softball, but the way that this will level up pretty much every sport across the conference. You know, Texas volleyball just won the national championship. Football, obviously, men's basketball, women's. I mean, everything across the board. You're bringing in 2 teams that will contribute immediately. And softball is probably the best example of that because you have the 2 teams who just competed for a national championship coming into the league, and Oklahoma in particular, obviously winning 4 straight. I mean, it's just going to make what's already the best conference in the sport even better. And, you know, we see it every weekend. Nobody is safe. Every series is competitive in some capacity. There's always something crazy going on in this conference, and to add 2 teams who bring so much, and especially Oklahoma, obviously again with the 4-time national champions, it just levels it up in a way that makes it so exciting to cover. I can't wait to have those conversations week in and week out, and to see how the SEC teams handle it, how the new teams handle it, and how everybody adjusts to this new way of life.
You mentioned the SEC being the best softball conference. Couldn't agree more. And in fact, I've been saying that for a few years now. But you know this, that hasn't always been the case. And really the majority of the history of the sport was dominated out west. What happened? Like how did the SEC become the premier softball conference even without Oklahoma and Texas? Was there just more money that piled into these programs? I know Tennessee's been good in the past. Obviously, Monica Abbott's run in OKC. A&M's had some good teams in the past, but what happened? What took place for the SEC to become the most dominant conference?
Well, I would say 3 things. One, Monica Abbott was a big piece because that was kind of the first big-time player from out west to come over to this part of the world. And so that kind of showed the California kids, all the kids out there, that they could come and compete and win and find a lot of success in the Southeastern Conference. Then you had the Alabama, Florida national championships in a 4-year span. And that showed that not only can players compete in the SEC, but the teams can win. And then you had all the money coming in from the SEC network, all the money coming in from the ESPN deals and everything else that the conference was doing. And that money was being put into the facilities. And you look across the league, Rhodes has been big for a long time, but Davis Diamond is, in my opinion, the best stadium I've ever been in. Haven't been to Love's yet, so Sooner fans don't come at me. But I would pay rent to sleep in the radio booth at Davis Diamond. I love that place. Bogle Park at Arkansas is just phenomenal. The facilities in Lexington and South Carolina and Missouri went through a big upgrade on their stadium as well. And Tennessee is about to go through one along those lines too. So the money coming in after the success has really just helped balloon everything up. And you also, frankly, had the football success too, which made those colleges more attractive because there was stuff to do outside of softball season. And you just add all that together. And that's why pretty much since about 2013, 2014, this has been the deepest conference for sure. Before then, like you said, you would have 3 or 4 teams have a great year. You would have teams compete for a national championship, but there would also be some schools in the league that you could just run over, that you would look at the schedule and say, that's an auto sweep. That is not the case anymore, and really hasn't been for the last 7-8 years. And a big part of that was all the things I just described. And that's what's made this conference so competitive top to bottom each and every year.
I kind of think when I look at all sports at OU and the adjustments that's going to take place with the SEC, I got to think that OU softball program is going to have more familiarity with the new conference than any other program on campus, just because not only what's been happening in Oklahoma City, but you'll see OU play Kentucky, in a non-conference, not even a series, but just something that goes on in OKC. They played at LSU recently, familiarity with Missouri and A&M. They've played Auburn in OKC recently. But still, with that being said, what do you think OU fans should know about SEC softball that you've seen over the years?
Get ready for it to get weird. I mean, I think I said this somewhere else, but the BYU game this year, where Oklahoma fans were like, what just happened? That happens once a weekend in this SEC landscape. I mean, you will watch a game and go, how did they just lose that they're the better team? And what just happened? And that's just normal in the SEC. And I think multiple things can be true. I think it's going to be an adjustment for Oklahoma, but it also doesn't mean that they're going to come in and struggle. They're probably going to be pretty good. They're Oklahoma. They're always going to be pretty good. But for whatever reason, this league, it just, everyone has the capability of beating each other at least once at some point. And that makes it hard to predict. It makes the games wildly entertaining. And also, I think you've got just across the board, you could argue maybe 90% of the schools in the league have the best coach they've ever had in program history right now. So you've truly got each program in the league firing on all cylinders as maybe they ever have in their entire program's history.
I think it's pretty obvious that OU is going to come into the league with a target on its back, and not just in SEC play and every single game they play in the non-conference portion of the schedule. But do you think that OU immediately comes in as like the villain of the conference? And I don't know who kind of feels that role now, but how, like, is there hate? Is there dislike with this program? Like, how do you think OU rolls into the conference with that whole situation?
My guess is it's more hunger. I think people want to be the ones to take down Oklahoma. I've seen a little bit of schedule, and what I can say is that I know that when Oklahoma goes somewhere, it's a big deal. And, Texas, the crowd was awesome in Austin this year, but these first road series for OU are probably going to be some of the biggest in those schools' history on their campus. And we know they're coming to Alabama. We've talked about that. Murph has been very open about that. I believe Tim Walton has confirmed that they're coming to Florida this year. And the others that I've seen, I don't want to spoil anything, but they're fan bases that are quite energetic. So it's going to be interesting to see what those environments look like and how OU handles that. But I think it's really just about the hunger, right? Like, you want to be the one that knocks down the champs a peg. You don't want the new kids to come in and run the conference. And it's interesting because at the same time, I don't view Oklahoma as the favorite in the SEC next year. I think Texas and Florida, based off the rosters and based off what we know at this moment right now, would probably be power ranked ahead of Oklahoma going into next year. Obviously, things can change. There's a certain pitcher in the portal who can shift the landscape for 20 different teams that have been in conversation with her. But it is going to be an interesting dynamic because they won't probably be the top dog, and yet they'll probably be viewed as the top dog because of what the last 4 years have looked like.
I'm interested to see how OU fans travel for road series. And I think, Gray, it's clearly the number 2 sport on campus right now. Some will tell you that it's their favorite over football, which is just insane how much softball popularity has grown here. But I'm sure OU fans are going to show up at Alabama, and Tuscaloosa is going to be great, and in Gainesville as well. I'm very interested, though, and I never doubt the passion of the SEC fans. How could you? But OU football plays both Alabama and Tennessee at home this year. We know those programs are going to travel. It's going to be insane. We know that Kentucky comes here for basketball. Big Blue Nation's going to be out here as well. But how well do how well do SEC softball fans travel? And how well do you think they'll travel, especially to a place like Oklahoma?
I think it depends on the program, kind of just like anybody. There are certain schools that have a reputation of not traveling. There are certain schools that do. I know Alabama has a very vast alumni base. So you'll probably see when Alabama comes to Norman in a few years. I'm not 100% sure when that is, but I know it's in a few years. There will be Alabama fans there. I'm not sure I can necessarily say the same about Ole Miss or Mississippi State. But SEC softball fans will show up. And I think the other thing that the SEC has shown over the years is that people will definitely show up if your team is winning. And that's true across the board for any conference, really. But SEC fans really buy in and will get all in if you're winning. And I think you'll see really good crowds who want to also experience things for the first time. A lot of people across the conference probably haven't been to Norman or Austin. They'll want to go to those places. They'll want to see and eat at all the places they've heard about in Norman. They'll want to see and experience Austin. However you view that, there's a lot to do there, but sometimes there's too much to do there. And it'll be fun to see which fan bases truly embrace those road trips across all sports, and especially softball, knowing that, again, you're going to be a part of a first. You're going to be a part of something really special. And I can't wait to see it. I don't necessarily 100% know which fan bases will get that call first. I don't remember the home schedule for Texas or OU, but it'll be fun to see which fan bases truly show up and who makes that trip, because it's also not necessarily a short trip for a lot of teams in the conference out to Norman or Austin.
Yeah, very fair. Well, hey, I'm sure you know this, but you can't mention a certain pitcher that's in the transfer portal on an OU softball podcast and not expect me to ask you about it. Now, the vibes here are still positive. It feels like from the beginning it's been positive, and you hear some different things. And early on, initially, it was, well, A&M and Texas and maybe even Florida is going to be involved in this, maybe Tennessee as well. You've got some OU softball players that she's currently playing with, and we're all kind of like, come on, Kinsey Hansen, get her to Norman. Come on, Kinsey, recruit her. But I guess what are you hearing on the front of Nigeri Kennedy, and how's that situation looking as of right now?
Well, I don't know her, so I'd shoot her a text if I did. But what I found interesting is these conversations have progressed, and I'm saving my thoughts about the transfer situation. Nicole Mendez and I actually are hosting a podcast that we're going to put out in the next few days. But what's interesting is I've heard more teams involved than people think. And I've heard more legit contenders that are different from the list. And the rumors are circulating about Texas Tech and the package that they put together with Jerry Glasgow going there. But what was so interesting to me is I've been very impressed by the way that Nigeri Kennedy has dealt with this, because everybody heard she was going in the portal and thought, man, who got to her? And everyone expected to see a D&C in there, and that she was going to go in with 3 schools in mind and pick one of those 3. And to her credit, she has talked to everybody. She has listened to everybody. She has had discussions, as far as I'm aware, with schools who maybe nobody thought would be in the mix. And I don't know where she's going to go. It sounds to me like she's going to wait until the Japan series is over and then start to really fully make that decision. But also the other funny part, you mentioned the OU girls on Team USA. Tim Walton's there too. Alabama's got some. There are a lot of schools who would be interested.
Jocelyn Erickson's there. I mean, we'll probably be catching it, right? So yeah, sure.
Exactly right. I mean, so that'll be fascinating to watch as well, and we'll see if that has any effect. But obviously, this is one of the biggest stories transfer portal wise, I think, that we've seen across all college sports in a really long time. Like the Jordy Ball thing, we knew once we heard what was happening, we knew where she was going. This is actually a legitimate race, an arms race, if you will, to see who will get the best arm in college softball. And I'm fascinated to see where it goes, because it will legitimately change the trajectory for any team that she goes for. I mentioned earlier, OU, I wouldn't have them first in the SEC right now. I would very much consider it if Nigeri Kennedy goes to Norman. So lots on the table. And I hope that she continues to do her due diligence and make the decision that is best for her and best, I think, for the sport of softball, because at the end of the day, we just want the sport to be as healthy as possible.
And it feels like it really is healthy right now. I think overall attendance, everything else, it's awesome. Where it's at now and the way that it's trending. It's not like trending like it's just trending up and up and up, and it's great. Well, that's a good segue, because that was kind of my next question. And I know that this is really difficult to answer because there is a chance that Nigeri Kennedy ends up with an SEC program next year. But just based on where things are at right now and where the rosters are at, and I think OU's done a fantastic job in the portal, even if they don't get Nigeri Kennedy. But you think Florida and Texas are kind of the 1-2 as of right now in the SEC. Would you put Oklahoma 3? Like, where would you forecast OU today in terms of way too early projecting the SEC next year?
I would go Texas, Florida, some order 1-2, and then I do think Oklahoma's 3, probably followed by LSU and Tennessee, and maybe you could jumble those 3 if you wanted to. I would probably go OU 3, LSU 4, Tennessee 5. But that probably is the proper hierarchy. You know, it's hard. I mean, again, Patty's done a great job. She's a phenomenal coach and all that jazz. It's really hard not to see a step back after you lose 10 seniors who were a part of the best class in softball history. And when Texas has everybody coming back, when Florida has basically everybody but Skylar Wallace coming back, that to me makes them the clear 1 and 2. And then you get into the discussion of, okay, now which roster looks most poised to make a move beyond that. And then I think you would go with Oklahoma. I think Beth Torina has done an excellent job in the portal, replacing their arguably best senior class in school history. And they might need another piece or two. We'll see. Yeah, there are still some other names out there besides Nyjah, but we'll see what she can do to close that out. And then Tennessee, if you've got Carlin Pickens, you've got a chance every day of the week and twice on Sunday. The other part of this that people forget is the schedule luck portion. You know, and we talked a little bit about Oklahoma's schedule. Alabama and Florida are not easy road trips. There are going to be some teams who have to go to Norman. That is not an easy road trip. There will be some teams who don't have to do either. And potentially that kind of stuff is what will decide the SEC. And Tom and I have talked about that on Out of the Box for a long time, how we're unfortunately getting closer and closer to the regular season, maybe not actually showing who the best team is in the Southeastern Conference just because of schedule luck. And that'll be something that we can break down once those schedules are officially released and once we've got the full picture. But that'll be as big a piece as anything that'll determine the standings in the conference this year.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. All right, so before we get out of here, I've got some quick hitter questions. I've got 7 of them. So you can't answer OU or Texas. It's got to be other SEC programs just to get OU a little bit more familiarized with the league. Best stadium in the conference.
I love Rhodes. I love you guys, but Davis Diamond. Now I'll say this. I'm speaking from the media perspective, and I know this is a quick hitter. I'm sorry, but the press box at Davis Diamond is just elite, second to none. So Davis Diamond is my answer. Fan wise, I'm unsure. LSU or Alabama would probably be up there.
Friendliest fans when it comes to SEC softball.
It's unfortunate that I thought of people not to say immediately. I would go probably kind of same deal. LSU, Alabama, Texas A&M would probably be the first. Arkansas too. Arkansas fans, for the most part, have been really good.
Meanest fans in the SEC for softball.
I gotta say Auburn. I've had some things tossed at me before out there. No, love my Tiger friends, but that was probably the harshest environment we've been in.
Best SEC rivalry.
Alabama, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Alabama, Florida is probably the answer.
Yeah, they just played on the big stage, it feels like, more than any other 2 programs. Program on the rise in the SEC.
Arkansas feels like the answer, but it's hard for me to truly buy in until they make a World Series. I don't know why they haven't been there.
I don't know what it is.
It's honestly the most baffling thing I've ever covered in the conference in my 8 years. I don't know how they haven't been there. They've had the teams to do it. So it's hard for me to answer them. I would honestly say Tennessee. and that sounds crazy for a program that had Monica Abbott and has competed for national championships, but they weren't really a factor in the beginning of my tenure covering the sport and working for Alabama. But these last few years, they've been a real juggernaut. And I don't see that slowing down. I'll just say that.
Best college town in the SEC?
Athens, Georgia. Easy.
That's like 95% of the responses, Athens, Georgia. And no one really has to think about it.
And I will say this, next year's SEC tournament is in Athens, Georgia. So Bama players, the real reason to stay a long time. Yes, you want to win something, but also we have a lot of places we need to eat in Athens that we need to go to.
So a question off the quick hitter. So now the SEC football championship, been in Atlanta for a long time. Basketball is going to be in Nashville for a long time. Baseball's been in Hoover for a long time. So I know that they have the date set, and Norman is on the list for programs to host an SEC softball tournament. In your opinion, that's not going to change anytime soon? Like, does there ever come a day when we have, like you have Hoover, like you have Nashville, like this is where the SEC softball tournament's at every year?
I would say ask me a year from now because, and Coach Murphy talked about this on our pod, so I feel comfortable sharing it. Huntsville is hosting an event this year from Wednesday to Sunday that is essentially serving as a test run for what would the SEC tournament look like if we had it here at the Trash Panda Stadium in Huntsville, Alabama. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see how the coaches feel. I know Alabama, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Auburn, they're all participating, and maybe a couple others that I'm forgetting. But that has been deemed as the test case. Will this work? Could this work? And if it does, then we'll see. But I think we're a lot closer to a unified location or just an overall neutral location for the SEC tournament than we have been in the last 4 or 5 years. I think it's coming very soon.
All right, last one. Who's the greatest of all time? The greatest SEC softball player ever?
I have to say Monica Abbott.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, but there are a lot of options. I could mention a million people. Lauren Hager at Florida probably doesn't get the love that she should on that list. Haley McClenny's literally the best player in the world right now. But Monica Abbott set the standard, what she means to SEC softball history, and the fact that her pro career went as long as it did. She's the answer.
He's Gray Robertson, Out of the Box podcast. You can catch him on Alabama radio broadcast. They're always celebrating when it comes to Alabama softball. Gray Robertson likes to show that off. SEC Network, he's involved with Softball America. He does it all, man. So, hey, I really appreciate your time. As you can tell, we're excited about joining the SEC, and I'm sure whether it's Tuscaloosa, Norman, Oklahoma City, wherever, we'll see you around very soon, man.
Absolutely. You're always welcome to come hang out at Rhodes, come hang out in the booth with us. And welcome Sooners, welcome Longhorns, welcome everybody. The SEC's happy to have you. Your lives will never be the same again. We're excited to have you in the conference.